Vegas. So we're excited to have him here. Before we get started, just a couple rules. We're going to move quickly. We've got a lot to cover in 3 hours, and we're already a half hour late. So if you need to go to the bathroom or something, just leave. But if you can stay, stay. And be present. Just be present and try to soak as much as you can out of this session. And we had some booklets out there that have some note pages in it. So if you don't have anything to keep notes with, just grab one of those out there before we get started. And just keep some notes. Thing I always recommend is try to, maybe on the bottom of the page, or use a star, I don't care what you do, but try to pick 3 or 4 points that you get out of today to put into your business in the next few weeks. If you don't do it immediately, it's probably not going to become part of your business. And then you're going to throw the thing under your car seat and you're never going to see it again. So take something from today and put it in action in your business. And other than that, I'm excited to get started. Joe Hererra is going to join us here in a second. Again, Joe's out of Las Vegas. He works for Real Broker. He's a good friend of mine now. We only met in June, but he's become an awesome friend because he's someone that I enjoy collaborating with, and he's a rock star. So Joe he runs a team that's in 7 different states now, Joe?
Yep.
7 states. Their team has done over 1,000 transactions in the last year. And he's a certified guide in exactly what to say. If you guys haven't seen the audiobook by Phil Jones, get it, download it on your Audible or wherever you can, listen to it over and over and over again. He's going to talk about exactly what to say, and we all need to hear this stuff. Everything that we've been asking buyers and sellers for questions for the last 15 years, we have to throw them out and start over. We have to be more authentic with our questions, and we have to learn new ways to communicate with our clients because our clients want that at this point. I've said a couple times recently that I think we're in one of the most unique times in my career, and I asked Jeff Hall, who's been in the business 45 years?
Okay, you didn't have to.
Oh, a lot. He's been in the business a lot. And he agrees that this is one of the most unique times in real estate for a couple reasons. One, our market is shifting very quickly. It's a market like we haven't seen before. And the second is because consumer buying habits are changing. With the internet, the speed of data, the distractions, everything's changing from the way that consumers buy. So we have to start paying attention to these things in order to stay ahead and thrive in the shifting market and survive, not only survive it, but thrive it. So we're excited to have Joe today. He's going to come up here and talk about exactly what to say. Joe, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. It's still morning time for me in Vegas. I have a really hard time adjusting to the East Coast. I couldn't go to sleep last night until like 3 in the morning. But I'm grateful to be here. Boston, it's the greatest city on earth. I've said that to a few of you that I met individually, but I love this city. I spent 6 days in New York on 2 separate trips over the last month. And if I never go to New York again, like I would be perfectly happy. But every time I come to Boston, I feel like home. So good on you guys for deciding to live here. This is an amazing place. So as Tracy said, I'm based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Just to give you an idea of who I am, I'm a husband and father, first and foremost. I've got 4 kids that I love. I'm a child of a broken home. My mom, so fun story, I was born on July 17th, if anybody wants to send me stuff on my birthday. I was born on July 17th, 1979. July 17th, so July 17th is an important day. Number 1, David Hasselhoff was born on July 17th, so that's good. Number 2, Disneyland opened July 17th, 1955. Why does that mean so much to me? Number 1, I love Disney. I got off a Disney cruise last week, and I'm going on a Disney cruise with my family in another 6 weeks. I own a travel agency, and it's super cheap for me to go. This is beside the point. But I love Disney, right? My grandfather on my mom's side, I never met. He was an alcoholic. He was highly abusive. But he was one of the early advertising executives for Disney. He was a cartoonist. And as Disneyland was getting ready to open in 1955, he did all the advertisements in the grocery stores in LA and the surrounding areas. So there's this weird connection I have to Disney with a grandfather I never met. Why is this important? Because I didn't come from wealth. There is no footsteps that I'm following where my dad set this expectation that I have to achieve some mythical, like chasing some ghost of my dad's success. My dad's a good man. He's a Vietnam vet. He went to work for the Bell system after getting home from Vietnam, And he spent his entire life installing phone systems, which then became installing internet. Like my dad works and lives paycheck to paycheck. No knock on him. He took care of us when my mom left, but he was not an entrepreneur. Well, my mom carried the same addictive behavior characteristics that my grandfather did. So when my dad decided to move my family to Las Vegas, first Carson City, but ultimately Las Vegas, addiction in Vegas isn't really a good mix, right? Like it's not great. So when I was a kid, my mom used to take me to the grocery store, and in Vegas we have these magical things in our grocery store called slot machines. It's crazy. So we would sit there for 2 to 3 hours while my mom would play the slots, and I learned my negotiation skills at the age of 9 when sitting in a grocery store, my mom turned to me and said, if you don't tell your dad about this, you don't have to do your homework. So I was like, it sounds like a great deal as a 9-year-old, right? It's not as great of a deal as a 42-year-old. So when I got into the professional world, I had 2 goals. Number 1, I would marry a woman that I would want to be married to forever. I did not want my kids to go through what I went through. Number 2, I will not live paycheck to paycheck. Like I was bound and determined, I'm going to create something financially for my family. So the 2 choices I saw were real estate and insurance. I was really attracted to insurance because of the residual income, and I was really attracted to real estate because of the big paycheck. Well, as a 22-year-old, I've been in the real estate industry for 20 years now, 21 years. As a 22-year-old, I wanted the big paycheck, so I chose real estate, right? So that's just a little bit about me. Our core team in Las Vegas, we have 200 agents on our team. We also have teams in California, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, DC, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. So our team has expanded a lot over the last year and a half. But at my core, to be honest with you, my superpower, and I hope all of you have discovered what your superpower is, like that one thing you're really, really great at. I have 2 superpowers. One of them I discovered through CrossFit. You're going to look at yourself and go like, are you serious? This guy does CrossFit? Yes, I do CrossFit. I'm not good at anything in CrossFit. I can't lift the most. I don't do the most push-ups, pull-ups, burpees, I hate all of it. My one superpower when it comes to CrossFit, which then bleeds into my business life, is I'm very consistent. I show up every single day. So if I was extraordinarily talented, meaning I just show up to a CrossFit class and I'm the best one there, I may be tempted to not show up the next day because I got this under control. Just like in business. If I showed up every day for business and just crushed it, it'd be easy for me to take some time off because my superpower is absolutely crushing it. That's not it. My superpower is I show up every day. If any of you are connected to me on social media, you know, like I'm trying to become really good at Instagram. I post an Instagram reel every single day. Like it's not great, but it's consistent. So that's superpower number 1 is consistency. Superpower number 2 is I'm really good at lead generation, like really good. I generate for myself and for my team Zillow quality warm leads at somewhere in between 1/5 and 1/10 the cost of what it would cost us to do it with Zillow or Realtor.com. So those are the only 2 things I'm good at. So I want to talk today for a second. I'm going to ask you a question. Out of curiosity, how many of you would consider yourselves to be open-minded people? Most. Take a second, stand up where you are, and let's get old school with this. Like literally stand up and introduce yourself to somebody around you that you don't know. It may be a challenge. We should be good at it because we're salespeople. Joe, nice to meet you. We met already. But.
Nice to meet you again.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Susanna.
Nice to meet you. I like your jacket. All right, go ahead and sit down. All right. For a group of hyper salespeople, this should be the easiest activity we ever find ourselves in, right? I started, before I said, hey, stand up and introduce yourself to somebody, I started by asking you how open-minded you are. Because by asking you how open-minded you are and you raised your hand, you made a commitment to action, right? So there's little things that we could do in our world, especially with our, if we run a team with the agents on our team, And with our clients, where some simple phrases, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I've learned from Phil M. Jones, as a certified guide in his program. But before I do this, I want to make a promise to you that are real estate practitioners. I'm going to teach you a principle and a script that I guarantee you, if you apply it, you will generate $180,000 in gross commissions in the next 12 months. So take out your pen, or if you're keeping notes on your phone, let me give you the principle, and then I'll give you the script. The principle is very simple. Apply my superpower number 1, which is just be consistent. Send 5 texts per day. Now, I've beta tested this over the last 10 years, so I promise you that it's true. 5 texts per day. 20 days per month. So you get 10 days off. Sometimes 8, sometimes 11. But on average, you get 10 days off. 12 months out of the year. So at the end of the year, you will have sent 1,200 texts. You're going to have to find some additional people, right? If you don't have a constant flow of leads, like scratching your head a little bit. Friends. So I get asked this a lot, like, who should I send this text to? The text is so simple, I promise you could send it to literally anyone. So you're going to send 1,200 texts. The principle behind it is you're going to get a 1% conversion rate. Not necessarily meaning that the 1% of the people you text will do business with you, but because of the way the script is written, 1% of the total number of texts you do will turn into a transaction. So you're going to do 12 additional transactions over the next 12 months. At an average commission, so in Vegas, our average sales price on our team is about $600,000. So at a $600,000 sales price, the gross commission will be roughly $15,000. You times it by 12 and you have $180,000. So go on your phone, go to Instagram and pull up at Joe Herrera. Luckily, I got on Instagram early enough that I was able to get my name. So when you're there, do 2 things. Number 1, click the little follow button so we could be friends. That's how we define friendship in 2022. And send a message. And the message just has to say magic. MAGIC. Now, for some of you, the message will automatically be sent to you with the script of what I want you to use. For some of you, I'm going to have to do it after I get done talking, because for some reason, Instagram doesn't always auto-respond. But if you follow me and then you send me the message magic, you are going to get the script. And the script, I promise you, is the easiest script you've ever heard. It could be used on anyone for anything. But if you do it 20 times a month, send those 5 texts, you're going to create $180,000 in income. So let's, and keep in touch. Let me know how it goes. So the principle behind the Exactly What to Say book and concepts is that if we're willing to change our words, we're going to change our entire world. I'm finding this to be true for myself. So I want to tell you why I find it so important personally. I attended a meetup in Orlando, Florida back in March, April, somewhere around there. Veronica Figueroa is a friend of mine, and she was hosting a get-together with some of the guys from Curator, and Phil M. Jones was there. I spoke here in Boston in 2018 in the same event that Phil Jones spoke at, and when he spoke in 2018, I wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. I was still my mother-in-law described me as a bull in the china closet, which is absolutely true. Like, I am 100% passion, I'm 100% visionary, and I will just run through every single conversation I have. So I wasn't ready in 2018 to hear what he had to say. But back in March, April, when I was in Orlando, he spoke day 2, and I ate up every single word. 2 things changed. Number 1, I realized that blunt force trauma is no longer the game that we're playing as real estate professionals, as mortgage professionals. It's not about blunt force trauma anymore. Number 2, I have teenagers. More specifically, I have teenage daughters. And it's hard. My son, 18 years old, he's currently in Botswana. He'll be there for 2 years serving the people of Africa. He was easy. If I said break up with the girl, he would break up with the girl. If I said take the trash out, he would take the trash out. If I said help me put the cover on we've got a '67 Ford Bronco. We're like, help me put the soft top on. He would cancel everything to do it. My 16-year-old daughter is a different story. When Porter was young, my son, it only happened one time. He yanked on our curtains in our home when he was about 2 years old. And if you ever want to see my wife really pissed off, this was like the maddest she's ever been at me. I grabbed his hand and I slapped his hand. He never touched the curtains again. He said words he shouldn't say, like bad words. And one time I put a drop of Tabasco on his tongue. I never heard him say a curse word again. Let's talk about Evelyn. When Evelyn was 2, we had the experience of getting Porter to do what he was supposed to do by putting a little drop of hot sauce on his tongue. So we tried it with Evelyn. Evelyn spit it back at us. Like, she's just a different breed. She's built different. So about right after I went to Orlando, I was at a volleyball game at our local high school. And my daughter walked by wearing something that as a father, I was just not comfortable with. And now traditionally, think bull in a china closet. I was going to run right up to her and say, you will never wear that in public again, right? I went up to her and I just said very simply, sweetheart, I was channeling my inner Phil Jones without the British accent. I love you more than anything in the whole world. I put my arm around her as we're walking in front of the entire student section. I love you more than anything in the whole world. How open are you to having a conversation with me when we get home about some of our dress and grooming standards, like our family standards? She committed to be open, and when we had the conversation, I'll tell you, it was beautiful. It wasn't because I naturally understood how to communicate with human beings, because naturally I'm a bull in a china closet. But it was because I slowed down the process, which ultimately speeded up the result. Guess what we haven't talked about since? Dress and grooming standards. We probably met in the middle because she wears shorts that I don't think she should be wearing, but we met in the middle, right? So the power of that then led to me going I need more of this in my life, because in my interpersonal relationships, I'm not very good. I generally will listen with the intent to respond. So our family sets 4 goals every year, and we change them quarterly. We set intellectual goal, and each of my kids, even my 10-year-old, has to do this. An intellectual goal, a physical goal, a spiritual goal, and a social goal. My social goal for 2022 was to listen with the intent to understand. And I'm still not very good at it at all, but that's my goal. So one of the things I want to talk about that I'm very, very passionate about, this doesn't come from Phil, this comes from me. I have waved the white flag of surrender to Zillow, or to Realtor.com, or to whatever internet search engine is, a Redfin or whatever. I've completely admitted defeat in one area of my real estate practice. I got licensed in 2001, and at the time, how many of you were in the industry, for the last 15 years or more? A couple of us. These were the golden age. People did not know what was for sale unless they called us. Do you remember that? It was the greatest. It was like, I'm looking for a home. Oh, well, great. You came to the right place because I'm the only person on earth that can tell you what's for sale. Well, with the advancement of the internet and the information age, people now can get instant access to whatever is for sale instantly. Using you to find what they are looking for slows down the process. Now, I'm not saying using you is a bad idea. I'm saying using you to find what is for sale slows down the process. Most of you are licensed real estate agents in this area. I can find on my phone very much quicker homes for sale around us than I could go up to you and say, hey, looking under $1 million and I need at least 800 square feet and 2 bedrooms and a garage and whatever. It would take you in this meeting, you could try to do it on your phone and get it to me in maybe 15 minutes. I can get it in 1 minute on Zillow or Realtor.com. So let's just admit defeat there, and let's just say we're not going to play that game anymore. So on our team, we're no longer playing the what is for sale game. We've abandoned it. If I hear one of my agents speaking to a client and I walk out and I say, hey, how did that call go? Tell me about your client. And they go, well, they're looking for a 4,000 square foot home. Well, no. Don't tell me what your client's looking for. Tell me about your client. Well, they want to stay under $1 million. No, you're not getting it, right? Tell me about your client. What I want him to say is, they're getting divorced. The wife is going to keep the house. She's going to refinance out and give him some money, and he's going to go buy a house for himself. Now we're getting somewhere. So write this word down for me, please. Quotation mark, why, unquote. Like, let's become, at least the 60, 70 of us in this room, complete masters of the why real estate game. What is a losing battle? Zillow has successfully gotten us to play that game for the last 6 or 7 years. We're trying to out Zillow. Let's just quit it. So on my team, it's no longer access to off-market properties we talk about. So think about it this way. If somebody texts us or calls us and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my home, I'm now in the process of training my team to no longer go, well, give me your address and I'll give you a valuation on your property. Can I come over next Saturday and present my listing presentation? That's no longer our process. The process is very simple. Hey, I'm thinking about selling my home. Oh, I'm so glad you called us. Let me ask you this. What led you to purchase that home in the first place? Well, I was getting married and we didn't have any kids at the time, so 3 bedrooms seemed like it was enough. And I didn't own a boat, and so I didn't think I needed RV parking, yada, yada, yada. Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like you made a good choice at the time, right? Well, what are the 3 things you love about it most right now? Like, well, what are the features you love? Tell me 1, 2, 3. Well, let me ask you this. We're obviously having this conversation for a reason. Like, why? What in your world is happening that's making you think it's time to sell? Now, I may still show up at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. I may still show up with a listing presentation. I'm still going to give them a valuation of their property. But the process of getting to their home is when I show up, they're going to go, Joe gets me. He understands a little bit about me, not my house, me. And that is the game that we're focusing on playing, and that is the game that exactly what to say, the book as a principle teaches us some of the magic phrases that allow us to understand people. So Phil talks about, and I don't remember who he quotes, have you ever thought about the word empathy? Does anybody have a decent definition of empathy they'd be willing to share with us?
Putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, I like it. Compassion, right? Like you're compassionate for that person. Anybody else? You feel what they're feeling. I love it. So we're right there in what Phil says. The best definition of empathy he's heard, write this one down. Caring about the things the person you care about cares about. Caring about the things that the person you care about cares about. Now, nowhere in that definition or any of the definitions you gave me is agreeing with what the person cares about. This is the obstacle we face politically, socially, whatever it is. I can empathize with you without agreeing with you, right? And we have to get to that world where it's like, I care about the issues you care about because I care about you. That's not to say I agree with your decision to move. That's not to say, how many of us have ever shown 5 homes to a client, completely bashed one of the properties, and then that's the property they end up wanting to make an offer on? Have you guys ever been there before? I know for me, I put my foot in my mouth so many times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the ugliest kitchen I've ever seen. Like, let's go on to the next one. And we get done and they're like, hey, we want to go with property number 3. And I'm like, oh crap. Like, I completely don't agree with their choice. And I was actually very vocal about not agreeing with their choice. Well, if I want to have empathy, I need to care about what the person I care about cares about, not to necessarily say I totally agree with them. I just care that they care. Does that make sense? All right, well, let's talk about how we develop empathy. Well, there's a process we have to go through with individuals. Ultimately, we as real estate professionals are in the decision-making process with people, right? Like ideally, people are making decisions when they work with us. I've talked a lot to my agents about the difference between a tour guide, and an Uber driver. Have you ever thought about that? So what are the differences you could say between, like in Boston, there's the, what's the duck boat? What's it called? Duck boat. It's amazing. Yeah, thank you. It's amazing. The duck boat is rad. You drive around in this ugly boat, and then you hop in a river. I mean, it's amazing. Do you know what the duck boat did not ask me when I got on it? Well, yeah, they didn't ask me if I could swim. They said there's life preservers.
Where are you going?
Where do you want to go? They didn't ask me at all, what do you want to see? I was on a tour. My partner and I, for our top producing agents every year, we take them on a trip. And I've talked about this principle of like taxi cab drivers versus tour guides forever, and how I believe we as real estate professionals should be tour guides, not taxi drivers. So my partner booked our tour in Bora Bora. So 2 years ago, we took our team, like 16, 18 people, down to Bora Bora, down to Tahiti. And I was like, bro, if we get on this boat and this guy says, what do you guys want to see? I'm going to lose my absolute shiz on him. Like, I'm going to be so pissed. So has anyone ever been to Bora Bora before? Tracy? Anybody else? You guys got to get to Bora Bora. Come and work with us and we'll take you to Bora Bora. We get on the boat and this idiot, like my wife and I and him and his wife, we sit down and he drives away from our hotel and he stops the boat. And I was like, oh, this must be our first stop on the tour. And he turns to us and says, hello, my friends. What would you like to see today? Like, bro, that is the worst question you can ask me. I don't want to think about this. I'm trusting you, who lives in Bora Bora, to know better than me, who's visiting Bora Bora, what I actually want to see. So I think had he asked the question a very different way, I would have actually loved it. If he turned around and he said, welcome to Bora Bora. Is this your first time visiting the island? What brought you here? Like, what's been your experience in the past snorkeling, scuba diving? Have you guys ever seen a shark? If he asked some questions about us and then turned around and said, here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to take you to see a 30-foot manta ray, and then we're going to go see eels at the reef, and then I'm going to surround you with 300 sharks. Ready, set, go. I would have been like, dude, this guy's a freaking magician. But instead he's like, what do you guys want to do? This is the worst question I've ever heard in my life. So keep this in mind. Some of the people, some of the time, will move to become more comfortable. But more of the people, more of the time, will move to avoid discomfort. So with interest rates hitting 7.25%, there's not a lot of speculative home buyers. Like, you know what? I just want to buy my first house. It's not happening. Comfort is not usually the decision people are making right now. Usually the decisions we're seeing people make is discomfort. And if we don't ask enough questions about them, we're not going to understand what their discomfort is, so that we can say one very simple phrase. Write this one down. Because you said. If I can't say because you said, I don't have the right to issue any further information. Phil says, prescription prior to diagnosis is malpractice. Think about that. Imagine going to a doctor and saying, like, yeah, my stomach's kind of jacked up, I've had a headache for a while, and I'm super tired. And you walk into the doctor and goes, oh, awesome, here's a prescription. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, don't you want to feel on my belly? Don't you want to ask how I'm feeling a little bit? Don't you want to hit me with the knee thing, right? We all want to be triaged. But think about how often in our real estate practice, we skip this very simple process. Think about it this way. Write this down. Number one, we need to become very good at asking questions. Because when we ask questions, something magical happens. We have conversations. Questions fueled out of curiosity are the best questions ever asked. I have a brother-in-law, recently divorced, still my brother-in-law. He's a maxillofacial surgeon in Las Vegas. Does anybody watch college basketball back when UNLV was awesome? It's like our glory days. Greg Anthony broke his jaw and they wired his mouth shut. Do any of you guys remember that? Against malpractice lawsuits. He has a son that lives in Austin, Texas, one that lives in San Antonio, and a daughter that lives in Georgia. The daughter in Georgia's husband is a dental anesthesiologist and or periodontist. And he also has a son living in Austin doing property acquisition stuff. Okay. The reason I know this stuff is because the guy never asks about me. So if we want to have a conversation, I have to be the curious one. Do you have anyone in your world where you're like, dude, this person never asked me any questions about myself? Anybody? My wife's sisters are famous for this. My wife is the youngest of 5 girls. And my wife was frustrated after a family party one time because she's like, I felt like we got nowhere. And I said, well, this is my bowl in a china closet. I was like, have you ever thought about the fact that you and your sisters don't really converse? She was like, what do you mean? We just talked for 4 hours. And I said, no, you didn't. The 5 of you issued a series of statements for 4 hours. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my son's Halloween, festival this year is going to be terrible. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Did you guys know that I just planted my garden? Oh, that's awesome. Like, I'm dating this guy. And I'm like, whoa, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. None of it correlates with each other. No one ever asks a follow-up question. Nobody ever says like, oh, really? Like, what about the Halloween festival do you not like? Like, how can I help? What are you doing to make it better? Whatever it is. No one asks any follow-up questions. They just issue a series of statements. Next time you're in your office, listen to the real estate agents making calls. And keep track. It'd be fun to keep track. Put a line down the middle and say Q and S. And track how many questions they ask versus statements they issue. Because a lot of us as real estate professionals want to ask one question and then issue a series of statements and then get someone to make a decision. Our questions are not intended to get people to make decisions. Our questions are intended to start what? Conversations. Because when we have conversations over and over and over again, we develop something beautiful, which is called what? A relationship. It's like, yeah, they're my friend. Tracy and I have talked a lot since June, and so he's able to say, like, I met the guy in June, and now we're friends. We're friends because we converse. Once we have conversations, it will generally create opportunities. So whenever an opportunity arises, your mind thinks about the people you have relationships with. Once you have relationships and opportunities arise, then you can expect decisions to be made. But if you're skipping the process, asking a couple of questions and then getting pissed off when people don't get pre-qualified or they don't buy a house or they don't list with you, the reason they're not choosing you is because you're not listening to them. You haven't built a relationship. The number one complaint that the consumer in the real estate space has about the practitioner in the real estate space is what? We don't listen. How many of you have ever gotten a client who said, here's what I'm looking for. So again, we go on the what conversation, and then they say something similar to, I'm getting properties from 4 different real estate agents, and none of them fit what I'm looking for. Have you guys ever heard that from a client? Like, realtors keep sending me properties that don't match my criteria. What they're saying is, no one in your profession has ever listened to me. Now, the argument I would make is listening to them about why they're deciding to make a move is infinitely more important than listening to them about what they're looking for. So write these 4 things down. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 cornerstones of effective communication. These are 4 things that I'm trying to learn because I need to be a better dad, I need to be a better husband, and I need to be a better leader. Number 1, the worst time to think about what you need to say is when you need to say it. When you're getting ready to say it. Have you ever found that to be true in your life? Like someone knocks on your door and says, hey, Lisa, I need to talk to you. It should be like ringy, dingy, dingy, dingy. Like if someone knocks on my door and says, hey, I need to talk to you, it's a panic moment for me because I'm very passionate and I'm very aggressive. I'm passive-aggressive, but not passive, I'm passionate-aggressive, which is like the worst combination. Like I'm fired up and I'm willing to throw punches verbally, right? So if I'm not prepared, I'm going to say some things in the heat of the moment that I'm ultimately going to regret. If you don't believe me, check my text messages where I'm like, hey, like, sorry, that got a little, south on us. I'm so committed to this principle that anymore I generally won't take a meeting unless I know what it's about. When somebody says like, hey Joe, can I pick your brain? 100%. What are we talking about? Because I want to mentally prepare for what I'm going to say before I have to say it, or else I'm going to say something wrong. Have you ever heard the phrase, he who knows himself knows best? She who knows herself knows best? This is just me being honest about myself. Like, if you run up to me right now and said, hey, one of your agents, blah, 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 I'm probably going to fire right back at you. But if I know there's an issue and you've sent me a text message like, hey, can we talk about Billy? He kind of botched a deal a little bit. I'm like, all right, I had some time to think about it. I'd be like, you know what? I looked at things. Billy did kind of botch that deal. But if I'm unprepared, I'm just going to fire back. Okay, number 2. Curiosity is the fuel for great conversations. If you're not having great conversations, it's either one of 2 things. Number 1, you're asking questions from a position of from practice, not principle. Like you're asking questions to reload, not to understand. Or number 2, you're not curious at all. So therefore, you're not asking any questions. I'm genuinely curious about every single one of you in some way or another. So I will generally ask questions around the things I'm uniquely curious about. Curiosity is the fuel for great conversations, not questions. Because we could ask some really stupid questions. And I do it from time to time. And the way you'll know I'm doing it is I'm texting while I'm asking questions. I'm not note-taking. Like, I'm texting someone and I'm like, oh yeah, well, like, how was that? You know, and I'm not listening. I'm not curious about them. Pay someone the respect to slow the process down a little bit and like put your phone down. I've gotten to where if someone walks into my office, I actually shut my laptop if I'm going to converse with them, because if I don't, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, no, I totally understand, and I'm just going to type the whole time. Number 3, Carnegie says that the magic is in getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. That's called manipulation, right? It's called like mentally roofing people. That's not a real thing. Like it's not a good practice. We have to understand why they want to do things, period. In today's economy, I promise you, there is no tactic you're going to use to get someone to buy a house that doesn't actually want to buy a house. There's no tactic you're going to use to get someone to sell a house that doesn't want to sell a house. Your job is not to make people do things that you want them to do. Are we cool with that? Our job is to understand that people are going to do things for their reasons, not ours. So let's stop pushing our reasons on them. Last but not least, number 4. The person asking the questions controls the entire conversation. So if you notice, most of the conversations you're in are people asking things of you. They're controlling the conversation. So one thing to keep in mind that Phil talks about quite a bit is the process of sales. We think selling is getting people to say yes. He challenges that mentality and he says the reality is selling anything has much more to do with destroying the option of no than embellishing the option of yes. So I'm going to teach you a couple of rejection-free opening statements that will guarantee that you'll never hear no from somebody. I don't like the word no. I for sure don't like being told no. Like when I want to do something or I want to converse with somebody, like I don't enjoy hearing the word no. So I will generally never ask a question for which no could be a logical answer. Does that make sense? So think about it this way. Oh, I'm sore. So if they are in their position and we are in our position, we want to get them from no to yes. But you know what's our best friend? Maybe. Like if we get people to maybe, we've got something. My kids, so my son will drive our Bronco that's a stick shift, but my other kids and my wife they don't know how to drive stick. So this doesn't really work if all you've ever driven is automatic cars in your life. But there's something called a clutch. And it disengages the engine and allows you to shift gears. So we need to think of our opening questions, our statements to people as clutches, not as like forcing them from reverse into first. Does that make sense? So here's one to start with. Hey, this may not be for you, but this works on everyone every time. Like, when I say this may not be for you, it just disarms them. And then when I say but, it gets them curious. So this is like, if I want my daughter to go get ice cream with me, this is if I want an agent to step up their game and attend a training. This is if I'm talking to a potential home buyer. This is if I'm talking to a potential home seller. It literally is the opening statement I use almost every single time I have to open a conversation with somebody. If I have something I want to talk about, a destination I'm hoping to get to, I'll start with like, hey, this may not be for you, but then there's two other phrases to consider. My favorite one is added onto this phrase quite often. Who do you know? So walk me through the difference in your mind between me saying, who do you know, and do you know anyone? What's the difference there? The second one is generally going to be a no. You can say to me anything like, hey, Joe, do you know anyone in Vegas that wants to charter a boat for $1,000 a day or whatever? And be like, no, I don't know anybody. You could ask me almost anything, and if I can say no, I'm going to say no. Because it's just more comfortable, right? So when we ask our home buyers, like, are you interested in this property? The easiest thing for them to say is no. If I asked a home buyer, like, hey, who do you know that's looking for a home like this? No is not a logical answer at that point. So the number of times you'll hear from our team, hey, this may not be for you, but who do you know that's interested in a property like this is growing on a daily basis. Because do I really care if that individual buys that home or if they refer to me someone who's looking to buy a home? Absolutely not. Both are great. There's one last one. How open-minded are you? So 90% of people would consider themselves open-minded. I think far less than that, proven by everything in our society, would tell us that that's not the case. But everybody wants to be open-minded, right? If I'm like, hey, how open-minded are you? I think everyone in the room raise their hand like, yeah, I'm open-minded enough. So do this. Pull out your phone and think of somebody you've been waiting to ask something of. And I want you to actually send a text. And if you need help with scripting, I'll help you. Now, this could be you've been trying to talk your husband into getting a dog. This could be you're trying to talk your wife into getting season tickets to the Red Sox. This could be a home buyer. This could be a lending partner that you're looking to develop a deeper relationship with. But let's send a text. The phrasing is pretty simple. Hey, this may not be for you, but who do you know that is blank? It could be anything. Or hey, you may not be looking for it, but who do you know that's thinking of selling their home in the next couple of months? I've got a lot of buyers looking, and I need a couple of homes to show them. Hey, this may not be for you. If I was a lender, this may not be for you, but who do you know that wants to start prepping for when interest rates drop so we can get them refinanced? The person may go, well, I've got a 2.5% interest rate, not me, but my buddy just bought a house and his rate's 6%. So you need to talk to Brian when rates drop. So send that text to anybody that you want to do anything and watch the magic happen. The answer is not going to be nobody. I would say 10% of the texts that get sent, somebody would say, I don't know anybody. Saying no is just not logical. All right, I've got a few more minutes left. Let me talk about something else. We have to understand in our marketing and advertising efforts that we are not selling homes. We're not mortgaging homes. We provide the greatest of all principles in our world, which is hope. It's really cool that of the 4 basic human necessities, we get to use, like one of them is our world. We are either helping people locate or finance shelter. That's awesome. The other 3 that would be good to be in is water, air, and food. We laugh about air, but if anyone's been to a mountain resort lately, they're literally selling air. What was that movie, The Lorax? Where he sold air? I walked into a convenience store and I was like, are you, I'm sorry, are you guys selling air? And in canisters, they literally have people buying air. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Well, we get to sell number 4, which is shelter. Do you guys want to hear something else that's really cool? In your marketing and advertising, the number one clicked upon image on the entire internet is attractive people. So if you're good looking, you're already way ahead of the game. Number 2, attractive houses. Number 3, food. There are apps that my children use that's literally like people just making food. I'm like, you've been on your phone for 20 minutes. What are you doing? They're like, Dad, look, like I learned how to make a smoothie with an avocado. And I'm like, huh? Like they literally just scroll through people making food. So the cool part is if you are a good looking real estate agent, you get 2 of the 3. If you're not good looking, you at least get the 1. So use that to your advantage, but realize that it's not about the home, it's about the hope. People are hoping that you're going to be able to provide them a solution to their problem. They need shelter, and you provide shelter. Like that hope is such a powerful principle. They need money, and you provide money. Like think about how cool it is to be a mortgage lender. You're like, I would like to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't think about it that way because it's just second nature in our world. But there were times where if you wanted a house, you had to actually pay for it. The mortgage industry's, like they gave me $500,000 to buy a home that I go to every other month at 3% interest. And I was able to advance depreciate it. And so I saved $48,000 on my taxes by doing it. It was the greatest thing ever. And I did it with her money. Think about the power of saying, I provide money for shelter. I provide access to shelter. Super cool. So one of the things we have to become comfortable with is realizing that we have to change people's perspective from time to time. So I'll talk about a couple of perspective changers. The number one thing I could encourage you to do, go onto Audible, go onto Amazon, and order the book Exactly What to Say. My encouragement would be to get the one that's exactly what to say for real estate professionals. The cool part at the back of the book is there's a whole bunch of scenarios where it'll say, here's the situation, here's the objection, and here's the response. And so he walks through a whole bunch of exercises for you. But one of the things I love is perspective changers. I love a challenge. I love debate. If I wasn't such a terrible student, I would have actually been a personal injury attorney. I would have loved it. Going to court and presenting my case and all that stuff. I'm a very argumentative person by nature. So I love it when somebody says something to me that I don't understand. Again, going back to empathy. I used to argue with people when I didn't understand their point of view. Now I just ask a whole bunch of questions. So here's some questions to ask. Somebody says to you, I'm going to sell my house, but I'm going to sell it myself. I'm going to do a FSBO. Traditionally, those were like fighting words for us, right? As real estate professionals, we're like, statement, 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 statement. Did you know, did you know, did you know? Well, what if we said something like, interesting, I'm hearing of people doing that. What's been your experience in the past selling your own home? Well, I've never done it. Okay, cool. No, first time for everything. What do you know about the disclosures and the legalities around selling your home, like failure to disclose something and how that could come back on you? So all I'm doing is I'm questioning their perspective, right? If somebody says hey, I'm leaving your team. Okay, awesome. Let me ask you this. What's been your experience in the past selling real estate? I'm leaving your team. I just want to go 100% and be my own person. Okay, cool. What's been your experience in the past doing that? What are you trying to accomplish by doing it? I want to make more money. Okay, cool. Well, there's 2 types of people, right? So what is your experience is one we can use. How important is it to you? So somebody says, I'm going to buy a home. How many of you have ever gotten but I'm going directly to the selling agent? Have you ever gotten that one? All right, cool. I hear that from time to time. Let me ask you this. What's the most important aspect in purchasing your next home for you? What are you looking to accomplish with it? Well, I think by going directly to the listing agent, I'm going to get a better deal because he'll give me his commission. Oh, awesome. Sounds like a great guy. What's been your experience doing it in the past? Well, I've never actually done it. Okay, cool. Well, then I would say, imagine, and I would paint a picture for him. Generally, unfortunately, in human nature, painting negative pictures does more for people than painting positive pictures. So I'm well, let's imagine this. So walk down this road with me for a second. You go directly to the listing agent, you purchase the property, his fiduciary responsibilities split, but in reality, he had the relationship with the seller first. You don't get a great deal, and you had no one negotiating on your behalf. How would you feel if that was what you experienced? Again, I wish I had a magic script to get you from here to there, but the goal in these conversations is just get to the middle ground. Get them to say maybe. So one of the other ones is it possible? So you're able to say to somebody like, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Fizbo. Like, is it possible? Is it in the realm of possibility that you list your home yourself, you actually don't make more money, and you have a ton of additional liability? I'm not saying, Mr. Fizbo, by doing this, you're going to have all these problems. I'm just saying, like, is it possible? Can I get you off of, like, I'm going to be a Fizbo into, like, maybe I should consider what they're saying. These are the exercises that we're walking through as a team. Like, I wish I could say I was a black belt and all this stuff. I'm just like a brown belt. I'm like, I've been doing it for a couple of months. But it's changing the way I see human communication. That's what's so powerful about all of this exactly what to say stuff, is it's changing the way I see human communication, and it's allowing me to realize, let me just tell you a story. We had one of my agents. So every Monday I get up and I do my whole shtick. And an agent was sitting over here and he's like, Joe, can I ask you a question? I got a lead over the weekend that was, he wasn't looking at properties. They responded to an article that was on our Facebook page about fall events in Las Vegas. I was like, awesome. He was like, so it's not a lead because he's not looking to buy a house. I was like, oh, again, I love being, I'm like, oh, really? Like, what led you to believe he's not willing to buy a house or not looking to buy a house? Well, I don't know. I mean, he was just asking about fall events. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he's like, what would you say? And you're going to guess, you could probably guess a lot of what I said to him. I said, well, I would start out by saying, hey, as promised, I'm following up just to make sure you got the fall events you were looking for. Let me ask you this. Out of curiosity, Vegas has 4 quarters. Has anyone been to Vegas before? There's so much more to Vegas than the Strip. Funny enough. Vegas has 4 little quadrants. The northwest where I live, which is like ranch properties, horses, and things like that. The northeast where the Air Force Base is. In my career of 20 years, have sold like 4 houses over there. Like, I don't go there if I don't have to. The southwest, which is like Summerlin and all that stuff, and then the southeast, which is like Green Valley, whatever. So I said, why don't you just do this? Why don't you say, like, hey, out of curiosity, what part of town do you live in? I just want to make sure you get the events that, that match your area. I live in the Southwest. Oh, awesome. Crazy. I have so many home buyers looking in the Southwest. May not be for you, but who do you know that's thinking of selling their home in the next couple of months? Because all these buyers would keep nagging me about the Southwest because they love it. He's not going to say no. He might say, the worst thing he's going to say is, let me think about it. Another direction I could go with it is, let me ask you this. What are the 3 things, your 3 favorite things about living in the Southwest? So whenever you ask somebody for their 3 favorite things, something really cool happens. The first thing they tell you is their canned response. So if you said to me, like, Joe, what do you like about living in Las Vegas? I would say, I mean, the weather's pretty good. That's just like my standard, like, what do I like about Vegas? If you ask me for 3 things, number 2 is going to be the thing I actually like the most. I would say, you know what? The golf is great, and it's a really cool family atmosphere. Believe it or not, Vegas is a great place to raise a family. What's number 3? I don't know, the restaurants are pretty good, right? So 1 is complete, like, off the top of mind. 3 is kind of BS. 2 is where all the jewels are. So when I ask somebody, what do you like about living in the Southwest? They're going to go, it's close to the airport. Okay, cool. What else? What's number 2? Now they're going to dig in and tell me something they really love about their community. What's number 3? Let me ask you this, just out of curiosity. What don't you like about where you are? Just give me one thing that you don't like about where you are. All I'm trying to create is a curiosity gap. I want them to go, well, the traffic out here really sucks. So I would say, interesting. Off topic, do you see yourself raising your family there for the next 5 or 10 years? So this is the last thing I'll tell you. In all of our conversations, I always want to get three things. I want to get a little bit of historical past, I want to get a little bit of current perspective, and I want to get a little bit of hopes for the future. So I would say, well, let me ask you this. How did you end up in the Southwest? Well, like my dad was moving out of town. He sold me his house. I didn't even have to use a realtor. I got a great deal on it, yada, yada, yada. Man, sounds like you made a great decision at the time. How's it working for you now? It's okay. I hate the traffic. The home's a little small, blah, 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 blah. Well, do you see yourself there in the future? So I can use this on anything. If a real estate agent is looking to join my team, well, what company are you with? I'm with Keller Williams. Oh, really? How'd you end up there? Well, great training. They came to my real estate school and put on a great presentation and 4 years ago, and the broker was there and blah, blah, blah. How's it working for you now? Well, do you see yourself growing there in the future? So it's the same process. Like when I come home from work, I may have something I need to talk to my wife about. And I'm like, hey, how is our dog working out for you? Like, how did we end up with a freaking dog, right? Like, do you see the dog being part of our future? Hopefully not. So long story short, guys, we're not in the what business. Let's just concede it. Let's wave the white flag. Let's give up. And let's really focus on the why business. If you want to succeed in the future, two things need to happen. Number one, you need to work significantly harder than you're working right now. I lived through the last recession, and it was hard. But we grew massively. So the reward for your hard work now is that you are going to be massively bigger and more influential in the future. And number two, you need to start obsessing over the why. If you can't tell challenge each other. If you're in an office where there's 3 or 4 of you and you hear someone get off a phone with a potential client, turn to them and say, hey, tell me about them. And if the answer is, well, they're looking to spend under $1 million, no. Tell me about them. And it'll only take a few times of somebody asking you about somebody for you to realize that there's a perception problem that we have. We have a full-time recruiter at our office. So in our leadership meeting, she said to me, hey, it's kind of weird, but we had a broker respond to our email about our team, about joining our team in our leads program. And I was like, that's weird. What do we know about her? Nothing. Like I freaked out and said, I'm going to have Joe call you. And I was like, I don't love that because that's your job, not mine. But imagine this. Draw, if you will, if you have paper, draw 2 buckets. Do that for me really quick. And I hope this visualization makes sense. On one of the buckets, put your name. And then on the next bucket, put them. And every conversation you get in, historically speaking, we've picked up our bucket and we've tried to fill theirs with our information. Are you with me on that? Like, have you ever felt that before? Like, statement. I know this. Did you know this? So we're trying to fill their bucket with our water. Just reverse it. You win the conversation game if mentally you can say, man, after that conversation, my bucket is filled with information about them. That's how you win. For 20 years in my career, we've been doing it the exact opposite. We try to give our agents enough information so that when they get on the phone with somebody, they can fill their bucket with crappy information. That's no longer our game. If my agent gets off the phone with a prospective buyer or seller and can't tell me out of their bucket what's full, he or she and I have an issue. Because I'm like, we talked about this. I heard you quoting that stupid article over and over and over again that you've been quoting all day. They don't care about you and your knowledge. What they care about is being listened to. What they care about is being heard. What they care about is somebody that they're going to make the largest financial decision they ever make, that individual has empathy. So let's connect. You got my Instagram handle. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you message me on Instagram, Lisa knows she messaged me the other day on Instagram. I got right back to her. So I very rarely will respond to text faster than I respond to Instagram messages. So thank you guys so much. Hopefully we provided some value, but more than anything,